Let faith be the song that calms the storm inside of me. Let it rise. Let faith arise. Let it rise. We'll see you break down every wall. We'll watch the giants fall. You cannot survive when we praise you. The God of breakthroughs on our side. Forever lift him high. With all creation crying, God, we praise you. Oh, we praise you. This is what heaven looks like. This is what freedom feels like. This is what heaven sounds like. We praise you, we praise you. This is what living looks like. This is what freedom feels like. This is what heaven sounds like. We praise you, we praise you. This is what living looks like. This is what freedom feels like. This is what heaven sounds like. We praise you, we praise you. We'll see you break down every wall. We'll watch the giants fall. Fear cannot survive when we praise you. The God of breakthroughs on our side. Forever lift him high. With all creation cry, God, we praise you. We'll see you break down every wall. We'll watch the giants fall. Fear cannot survive when we praise you. The God of breakthroughs on our side. Forever lift him high. With all creation cry, God, we praise you. Oh, 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 oh. We praise you. Oh, 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 oh. We praise you. Oh, oh, oh. We praise you. Oh, oh, oh. We praise you. I've tried so hard to see it. Took me so long to believe it. That you choose someone like me to carry your victory. Perfection could never earn it. You give what we don't deserve, and you take the broken things, raise them to glory. You are my champion. Giants fall when you stand undefeated. Every battle you won. I am who you say I am. You crown me with confidence. I am seated in the heavenly place, undefeated, with the one who has conquered it all. Now I can finally see it. You're teaching me how to receive it. So let all the striving see. This is my victory. You are my champion. Giants fall when you stand undefeated. Every battle you won. I am who you say I am. You crown me with confidence. I am seated in the heavens. fall when you stand undefeated. Every battle you won. I am who you say I am. You crown me with confidence. I am seated in the heavenly place, undefeated. By the power of your name, I'm seated in the heavenly place, undefeated, with the one who has conquered it all. Dear God, I thank you for the opportunity that we can come here today and just whatever's going on in our week, we can cast that aside and come here and be born anew and just learn something with you and grow our relationship with you and have community and friends and praise you, Father. And I thank you for the opportunity that we have to do that. And I pray for those who don't have that opportunity, and I pray for every heart in this room and that they can take something out of Pastor Nathan's sermon. And I pray that you speak through Pastor Nathan today. And I'm just so thankful for you, God. Amen.
All right, you guys, let's put our hands together for our praise team. Praise team. Here's where I want to start today. I want to start with your imagination. So if you're willing to really stretch your imagination with me for a second, just imagine for a moment waking up on a spaceship and you have no memory. So picture yourself. You wake up on a spaceship. It's a very big, very busy spaceship. There's a lot going on, and you have no idea really who you are or what you're supposed to be doing there. This is sort of like being born on Earth. I mean, think about this for a second. You arrive on the planet. It's moving through outer space. It's very busy. You have no memory of who you were before you were born because you weren't born yet and you weren't a person yet, so there wasn't you until you were born. So you arrive on the planet, and there's really nothing, no information that you have except for whatever everyone's going to tell you. So this is the situation when you're on the spaceship. You wake up with no memory. You go out of your little spaceship capsule room, cryogenic sleep, I don't know. So you start walking around the busy spaceship trying to figure some things out. Hopefully you have a friend, or maybe like a really cool AI who calls themselves your mother. And so then they're telling you what you need to know. All right? And so they're like, okay, here are some things to not do. Don't get involved with boys. Or there's different things that the AI mother is going to tell you to just try to protect you and give you some clue about who you are and what your purpose is and how to avoid really bad mistakes like walking outside the airlock or something. So there's things on planet Earth when you're born that you don't know. Think about a little kid who wanders out into a street. It's not because they're stupid. They just don't know. They're new to the planet. And so most of you in here are still under maybe 18 years on the planet. And so think about that short amount of time in the big scope of things. That's the word I'm looking for. The big scope of things. You're relative. And think about this. Up until about 2 years ago, your brain wasn't even working right because all you really cared about was being the fastest kid on the playground or something. So really, you are very new to this spaceship scenario. You're very new to the situation, and you have to figure out, okay, where's the manual? Who's going to show me why I'm here and what I'm supposed to be doing? This is the book of Genesis, you guys. We're getting into the beginning of the Bible. The first 11 chapters really is the foundation for the rest of the story. And it gives you a framework for who you are, who other people are, why we're here, and what went wrong. Because guess what? Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you, something went terribly wrong on the spaceship and we're all doomed. But guess what? There's a plan to fix it. And you get to be a part of the plan to fix what went wrong. So, okay, if you like that imaginary scenario, let's move on and talk about one of the things that we learn right away in the very front end of the book that's going to tell you who you are, why you're here, what went wrong, how it's going to get better. The very front of the story, the book is going to tell you how we got here. It's going to tell you that there is a powerful God. And, oh yeah, he's good. You can just be like, whew, that's good. Because think of the alternative. I mean, if there was this higher intelligence who created everything, and they were just creating you to do little sick, weird experiments on you and make your life a living hell, which some people probably think that's why they're on the planet. But guess what? It's not, because the book tells us that he's good. And he has a reason for why you're here and why all the people are here. So the first thing we learn is there's a God, he's powerful, and he's good. And when God made the people, that's you, he made them in the image of God. So this is where we're going to start today. Because I know most of you who have grown up in church have probably heard this phrase, image of God, before, but I want you to just stop, think about that phrase, and ask yourself, do I really know what that means? The image of God. What is the image of God? I brought along a couple of some really, really great visual aids. All right, does everybody see this? Okay, good. So that, I'm glad you had a good look at that. That was a coin. Everybody say coin. Coin. So on the coin, I'm not sure you're aware of this because you're all into, digital money and things in this generation. But listen, this is an actual coin, and it has an image on it. And it's an image of a man on a quarter. You might know who it is? George Washington. Correct, George Washington. So here you go. Cool. So, okay, the image of George Washington is on the coin. It's not really George Washington. I know I'm not telling you anything shocking. It's not. It's just an image of George Washington. So now think about this. God created people in the image of God. This I picked up on a beach somewhere. Okay, so this is a shell, and inside this little shell there used to live a little creature. We'll call him the shell creature. And so he probably has a scientific name, but the shell creature is not made in the image of God. I know you're like, please, we know this, we're not stupid. Listen, the little hermit crab that lives inside the shell, little shell creature, he is not made in the image of God. The face on the coin is not in the image of God. It's an image, but it's not an image of God. Where am I going with this? Think about what it means to be made in the image of God. And what is the difference between the image on the coin and you? Here's the obvious answer.
I'm not decapitated.
Correct. Also, you're alive. Those two ideas go together. So, you're alive. Think about how powerful God is when he created an image that is a living, breathing being that makes choices. So think about what it means to be made in the image of God. So God made people in his image. They are alive. Everybody look at Genesis chapter 1. If you have your Bible, you can turn there. And I'm going to show you some things that maybe you've just kind of glanced over before, but never really stopped to consider and think about. And it's important, I think, to get this right away at the front of your understanding of the Bible and who you are and who other people are. We are made in the image of God. There are lots of images in the ancient world of gods. In fact, in the ancient world was filled with all kinds of ideas about gods. There were like gods in the trees, and then there was like the river god, and there was like the sun god, and there was like the moon god, and there were all these different gods, right? And so then the people would create these carvings, these carved images. We call them idols. And so people would burn like a candle to their idol and worship what they thought was the real God behind that image of that idol. In fact, I think it was in 2009 I went to Indonesia, and I saw some of this firsthand in my experience, where the people actually burn money to worship the different gods so that they'll have good luck. So every morning they would go down to the seashore and they would just create, this little paper boat, and then they would put some money or something in it, and then they would light it and just send it on its way. And it was like off off to the sea god so that they would be blessed. Because you know what? When you're an island, maybe you want the sea god to be happy with you. So these are some of the things, some of the traditions that developed over time. And people were thinking in terms of these terms, like, this is the image of this sea god. Well, the real God, the true God who introduces himself here in Genesis chapter 1 is basically telling us and letting us know, no, guess what? There's no carved image. There's no coin that has the image of God on it. It's actually the humans are the living image of God. So check it out. We'll look at Genesis chapter 1, beginning in verse 26. It says, "Then God said, 'Let us make man in our image and our likeness, and let them rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air and over the livestock and over all the earth, over all the creatures that move along the ground.' So God created man in his own image." Here we go. "In the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them. And God blessed them and said to them, 'Be fruitful and increase in number. Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air and over every living creature that moves on the ground.' And then God said, 'I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth, and every tree that has fruit with seed in it. They will be yours for the food.'" So God announces to his royal court, his royal heavenly court, he says to them, "I've done all these really awesome things for creation. Now the ultimate in all of creation, the human." It's like the ultimate aspect of everything that he created so far in those first 6 days. And it was already a wonderful planet when he made the humans, right? Because he had created 3 environments. If you remember the story, he created the 3 environments for living things to live in. He created the skies, and then he filled the skies with living creatures. He created the seas, the oceans, and he created living creatures that lived in the oceans, not in the skies, different creatures, and then the land and its creatures. And so once he created this 3-tier different cosmology on earth, he puts the people. The people had a role to play. Number 1 was they were going to represent God as his image. So they were the image of God on the planet. You couldn't really see God, but you could see the image of God. They were the humans. And so here we are, created at the beginning, and humans are special. Not only because they're made in the image of God, but an aspect of being made in the image of God is made for a purpose, that they were going to share God's work. So God was not actually finished. He was finished with the part he was going to do in creating the 3 environments and filling it with the people, but Eden was not perfect. I know some of you are like, wait, no, the Garden of Eden, wasn't that perfect? It was, but it wasn't, because it wasn't finished yet. In fact, the role of the people was to co-labor with God in this relationship that he created people to experience, and they were going to actually bring creation to its fullest potential. It's a very exciting job. In fact, the way it's described here in this passage, the people were created to rule, to multiply, and to subdue. Rule, multiply, subdue. That was the original job description. And when we hear that job description, we think, that doesn't sound like a great job description. But remember, this is before sin entered the picture. So it was before ruling was harsh. When you hear the word rule, you might be thinking, oh, I know some people who try to rule everybody, and they're terrible people. They're harsh. But this is before sin entered the picture, right? So ruling wasn't harsh then. Multiplying. This is about procreation. And so God made male and female. Think about this just for a second as a side note. He didn't have to create people male and female. He could have created everybody just sort of unisex. And then when it was time to procreate, it would just sort of pop out a baby. You know, and you're like, there's a baby. And so everybody would join around and be like, let's all take care of that baby that just popped out. So that would be a weird way, right, to do things. But if you're God and you're making up how you want to do things, you could do it any way you wanted to do it. Instead, he chose to make people male and female and bring new humans into the planet through a certain process that involved intimacy. So it was his idea. Sex was his idea. It's a good gift for humanity. And so he says, basically, people get to enter the world into a loving family where there's a mom and a dad who are going to watch over this new human. And so that's how God chose to do it. It says something about who God is. It says something about this loving and good and intimate, gracious God who created that for us. But remember, multiplying, which was their original job description, was to multiply and spread out all over the planet and to rule over it. It got twisted. And so there's just a lot of sexual sin in the world now after the fall of mankind. So you have no sin in the world yet. You have a wonderful job description of ruling, multiplying, and subduing. But remember, subduing does not mean conquering. That doesn't happen until after the fall, right? And so subduing is really where I want to camp out a little bit and explain a little bit more today about what it means to be in the image of God. Because when God made people, he saw that it was good. And what he did was he said, you guys are going to be my happy caretakers. Let me explain what I mean by happy caretakers. So a couple weeks ago was spring break. Anybody have a really great spring break? Just a really wonderful spring break? Anybody have a terrible spring break? Yeah, you're probably like, my spring break sucked. Well, listen, my spring break was pretty good. We went out of town, and I got to see my oldest younger sister. And I was so glad to see her because I haven't seen her like since the pandemic started. And it turns out she's doing really, really well. She got this new job that she really loves. You know what? Her job is so cool. So there's this state historical monument in the center of Texas, and her job is to take care of that place. So, you know, she works there where people come in and they like buy a ticket, and there's all these really great hiking areas, and you can go up to this cliff, and you can look down over this valley, and you can see the monument. But one of the things that's really cool about the place is it's like the original brewery in Texas. It has this cliff, and built into the cliff, this original brewmaster who had come over from Europe in some place, he chiseled stones together, and he stacked up all these stones, and he built this stone building into the side of the cliff where the water would just cascade down through it, and he had a fresh source of water to make beer for all the people. And so this wonderful place in the center of Texas, where beer was born in Texas, is where my sister gets to work every day. And her job is to welcome people, to take care of the place, and if there's a snake, to get rid of it, or if there's a weed, she has to pluck it. And so the idea is that she is the happy caretaker of this place. What a great job. And if you think about it, that's the original job that God created for people. He's like, you're going to inhabit the planet with other humans, that you're going to really love one of the other humans, and you're going to make babies with that one other human that you love, and then you're going to teach them how to be happy caretakers over the planet, over the animals, and over the plants, and you're going to subdue the earth. And so this was the original job description of the humans, and he made us in his image so that we could do these things. But like I said a minute ago, the subduing part makes us think of like wrestling or something like that. But really, the original idea of subduing is to take what is chaotic in creation and then make something really great out of it. How many of you ever heard of a game called Minecraft? Anybody ever heard of it? Okay, so if you ever heard of the game, you ever played the game, some of you play it every day, you are perfectly, you understand perfectly what it means to have this subdue kind of job description in the biblical sense, because what you're doing in Minecraft is you're taking the raw resources and then you're putting them together in such a way as to create order, to create something useful, to create something that you want to create. And so in the same sense, the people who were made in the beginning were given this responsibility. Let me give you some examples. So a farmer subdues the earth and creates crops. A farmer has to figure out, how are we going to take the resources of the water and the soil and the seeds and bring forth food from the earth? Think about a musician. In what way does a musician subdue the earth? Well, they take all these chaotic sounds and they put them into order in such a way that brings forth this pleasing music. Think about an artist. an artist takes all these random different colors. Think about how many different colors you can create in the world. And then they create art out of these different colors. And so in this sense, this is the original purpose, made in the image of God, is to bring all of this stuff that God is providing, just like the beginning of Minecraft or something, and you're just going to go, okay, I'm going to plan to build this, I'm going to make that, this is going to go over here. And some of us are a little more toward like engineering, some of us are more toward writing, some of us are like storytelling, some of us are art, some of us are like taking care of the other people. So everybody's kind of got these natural inclinations and abilities that God gives them because He made us that way. He wants us to have these types of subduing and cultivating and bringing forth the potential of the earth. Does that make sense? So everybody's with me? Did I talk too much and too fast? I don't want to go too fast. I want you to understand the image of God is more than just like a picture of an image. It's like you and me and all the humans for this purpose. Okay, so we get to be creative with God. Original purpose of mankind. In relationship with God and with each other, bringing forth all the great things on the earth. Now, let's talk about what went wrong and how God plans to fix it. The happy caretakers were given a warning. They were given a choice. Some of you have experienced what happens when the authority in your life gives you a warning, you have a choice, and then you make the wrong choice. This is what happened to the happy caretakers. They could choose life as God intended it, or they could choose life on their own terms. That was the choice. God placed the choice in the garden. He said, if you make the wrong choice, there's going to be consequences. If you make the right choice, there's going to be wonderful blessings. This was their choice. They could have life from the tree of life, or they could have life on their own terms, which would be from the tree of knowing the good and the not good. All right, so there's always this relationship between God and people. From the beginning, God created the people for a relationship with Him. It's like an involved parent. He wasn't just going to create them and then step out and then never see them again. He's there, and so God intended to enjoy His people and together achieve these great things on earth, but the world didn't go in the way that He told the people to take it. He gave them the choice. And the world was supposed to be this flourishing place with beauty and good relationships all the time, but immediately the people were persuaded to stop obeying God. Have you ever disobeyed authority? Okay, stop there. Just, you don't have to say it out loud. If you have, just in your head, just go check. Okay, and not like bad authority that was like oppressing you and you were rising up in rebellion in some heroic way. I'm not talking about rising up against bad authority. I'm talking about disobeying good authority. And like for no good reason, that the authority said, don't steal the car, and you did anyway. So some of you know this story. I'm not going to go into the whole story, but probably the worst thing I ever did in high school was I took a car that didn't belong to me. I was going to return it. It wasn't just me by myself. I mean, it was in 9th grade. You know, if you're in 9th grade, sometimes you do stupid things. So, no offense if you're in 9th grade. So, 9th grade, I was staying over with a friend. You know, some of you have done this before, where you do a sleepover with your friend, and you're like, "Hey, Mom, can I sleep over with what was his name? I can't remember. Cody, I think." So, sleeping over at Cody's house. Normally, me and Cody would just play video games and listen to like gangster rap, like all, you know, white kids in the suburbs. And so we were just hanging out, listening to music that we're not supposed to listen to, and knowing every lyric. And then the parents went to bed like parents normally do at a reasonable time. Probably they went to bed around 11 or 12. We were staying up late. You know how you do when you're sleeping over and you stay up way past bedtime. And so we're staying up late. It's the middle of the night, and I don't know if it was Cody's idea. I don't know if it was my idea. Somewhere in the conversation, late after midnight, one of us said, wouldn't it be great if we just took my dad's car? I was staying at Cody's house. His dad had a really sweet fire engine red Toyota Supra, stick shift. This thing would just peel out and go fast because Cody's dad loved this car. He loved this car. Never let a speck of dirt get on the car. And he took us for rides in it because he was like, I'm Cody's dad and I'm cool. I'm going to drive fast in my sports car with my teenage son and his friend. And so we went around town, in his car before. We're just thinking, you know what, Cody, would be really fun is to take your dad's car without permission. And so, I don't know where the idea came from, but we came up with the idea, and so we came up with this plan to get the car out of the garage without making any noise. Does anybody have a noisy garage? So, this is really hard to get a garage door to open without making any noise in the middle of the night when everything's silent and quiet. We figured it out. I'm not going to tell you because I don't want you to know, but we figured it out, and we got the garage door open. Took the car down to the end of the driveway where we wouldn't start it too close to the house. We thought through the whole thing. It was a perfect crime. We're going to return it. You never know. And so we get the car down to the end of the driveway. The only problem is, can anybody guess what the problem is?
Can't drive?
Well, not only could we not drive, because we understood the theory of driving. We'd seen driving done before. I mean, we were ninth graders. We'd seen it done before. But the problem is, neither of us had ever actually been taught how to start a stick shift. Would any of you even have any clue? Would any of you even know that you have to press down the clutch? Did you know what a clutch is? Like in a stick shift, there's more than just the gas and the brake. There's a clutch on the left-hand side. That's why they tell you when you're learning to drive, don't use your left foot, And so the left foot's for the clutch. And so you have the accelerator, you have the brake, and then you have the clutch. Well, little Cody and little Nathan, ninth grade, didn't know that. And so we're just sitting in the car at the end of the driveway when suddenly the lights of the house come on. Cody's not focusing on the house. He's in the driver's seat trying to figure out, why won't it start? I don't know. Why won't it start? Why won't it start? I'm like, I don't know, but the lights just came on. And he just, like that, he just turned pale. He's already pale. He looked at the light and just froze. You know how they talk about deer? This was Cody in the headlights. He was like focused on that light, and I'm focused on the front door. And I'm like, Cody, somebody's awake in the house. He's like, shh, play cool, man, just play cool. I'm cool, but somebody's awake in the house. He's like, they're just getting a drink of water in the kitchen. They're going to go back to bed, nothing's going to happen. I'm like, okay, cool. So we're sitting in their car, frozen, not moving, hardly breathing, staring at the front door. Front door swings open. Cody's dad, middle-aged dad, walks out in his boxer shorts, nothing else. Fire, like spewing out of his ears, like rage in his eyes. He comes marching down the front sidewalk. There's like a long front sidewalk yard to the long driveway where we are. I was thinking, run, 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 run. But then I'm like, where do I go? What do I do now? I don't know where to run to. So I just sat in the car. Have you heard this story before? I forget. I'm getting old. I tell stories over and over. Okay, so he comes, he reaches, I remember it. It just happened in slow motion. He reaches for the driver's side door where his son was sitting, and he opens it. Wham! Like this. Grabs Cody by his neck and just picks him up like this. It's like Thanos. Okay, so he's like, he's got him in his grip, and he's like, oh, I'm sorry, this idea. And so he's just like holding him up like this, and he just like throws him into the yard, and he just starts cussing him out in the middle of the yard. I think he kicked him one time. And so Cody runs in the house like, Mom! And so they go in the house. I'm just sitting in the car. I don't know what to do. This is way before cell phones, so I'm like, Mom, help! I can't. There's no cell phone. So I'm just sitting in the car, like, do I go in the house? Do I figure out how to start the car? No, I'm like, what do I do? I'm just sitting in the car. Well, maybe an uncomfortable 5 minutes goes by, and here comes Cody's mom. And she's got the, the bathrobe, like the mom robe, and she comes out, and she's like this, like walking to the car. And she comes over to my side and says, Nathan, honey, like that. That's how she starts. And I'm just like, yes, ma'am. I don't know what she's about to do. I don't know, like she's going to stab me in the face with a knife. I don't know. I'm really scared. And she goes, would you like to come inside and call your mom to come pick you up and take you home now? I'm like, yeah, I guess, but not really. I don't know. So I went in the house, called my mom. Mom was like, send him to jail. Anyway, that's another story. So I don't know if you've ever disobeyed. The point is, sometimes we disobey authority, and that's what happened in the Garden of Eden, okay? God said, don't eat from that tree, just like we knew better than to take a car, and we did it, and they knew better than to eat from that tree, and they did it. And so you've probably done things too that you're not proud of. Don't take cars that don't belong to you. Here's our big problem. We want to be our own image of God. Like, we don't want to be the image of God. We want to be our own image. We want to be like God, right? And to be God like ourselves and to create our own kingdom and not like serve his kingdom. So that's our biggest problem. And after we rejected God, after humanity rejected him, then humanity starts to spiral down the drain. And it just starts to go worse and worse and worse. And actually, by the time you get to chapter 6, this is happening in chapter 3 of Genesis, it's gone so far down the drain that things are so violent that I think in chapter 6, verse 5, it says, God looked at the heart of humans, and it was only violence and evil all the time, and he was sorry that he made people. It's one of the saddest verses in the whole Bible. I mean, God loves people. He created them to enjoy him and to have this wonderful experience in loving, intimate relationships, and people rejected him. And so, people who were designed to rule and subdue became twisted. And they turned ruling and subduing into killing and enslaving, and it became all about power struggles. And people have not been very good images of God until a true human arrived in Bethlehem. Up until that point, there really hadn't been one. Nobody had seen anything like it. A true human appeared on the planet. And this one was going to be different. You know how a mirror, are y'all familiar with looking in the mirror? So, when you look into a mirror, it reflects your image. So think about what it means to be the image of God. Humans, each of us, are created to reflect God in our world. That's what a mirror does. It reflects an image. But what happens when the image gets shattered and broken? It becomes a distorted image. And so when you look at humanity today, humanity throughout all of history, what we see is a distorted image of who humans were created to be. Jesus shows up, and he's not a distorted image. He's a perfectly clear image of God. And so Jesus demonstrates what it means to rule. He rules by serving. He didn't come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. And he demonstrates what it means to be a true human by loving the other humans. I mean, he touched lepers. People were disgusted by lepers. People were afraid of lepers. Lepers were covered in a skin disease that was highly contagious. Nobody wanted to go anywhere near a leper colony. That would be your worst living nightmare. Kids would just have nightmares, terrible dreams about getting leprosy and having to leave your family and go live in a leper colony with all these strange, ugly, gross, sad people. Jesus shows what it means to be a true human. He touches the leper and heals him, right? So not only is he the true human, but he's truly God with the power to heal. And so Jesus shows up and begins repairing all the broken mirrors. The little broken mirror people who are shattered and twisted, and he starts to heal them from their diseases, and he starts to heal them from their demonic influences, and he starts to accept the people who have been rejected and the people who have been twisted by greed, and he says, you know what, Zacchaeus, I'm going to come stay at your house and just have a meal. And he's like, I can't believe it. Me? He's like, yeah, you. He goes to his house, and it changes Zacchaeus' life, and he's like, forget it, I'm not going to be greedy and corrupt anymore. I'm going to repay everybody 4 times what I stole from them. Jesus, the true human, shows us who God is. And that's what happens. The gospel is about becoming truly alive. And we get to share that promise with the walking dead around us. I'm not going to go into any stories about the walking dead, but what I'm saying is there's there's a very strange metaphor you can think of when it comes to zombies and what humans are like, because they're alive, but they're not really alive. If you could see the sin in people's lives, it would be grotesque. And so you get to be a person who is in recovery, being repaired by God and able to help others around you. I'm going to give you 3 takeaways, and then I'm going to put some questions up on the screens, and you guys will get a chance to discuss the questions with the people around you. The last few months, we've been separated in here into lots of space, and so we've been pulling our chairs together to discuss the questions at the end. Today, now that we have chairs like this, I'm not sure how it's all going to work. So just do your best to gather and turn to the people around you, and you can discuss the questions I'm going to put on the screens. Before I put those questions on the screens, let me give you 3 takeaways, and then I'll pray for you, and then we'll talk about what we're going to talk about. So here it is. Humans are eternal soul creatures, which I think sounds really cool. So we're eternal soul creatures. That means we're different from the rest of creation. We are the special part of creation that God intended to have a relationship with and rule through us on the planet as happy caretakers. So we are the soul creatures. That's what it means, all of us as humans. Together we have a significant eternal purpose, and Jesus is the rescuer, the one who's repairing the twisted and broken souls. So those 3 things, keep those in mind. We're going to look at these questions after I pray. So let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for creating and giving life and making humans and making us male and female and giving us important responsibilities. And thank you for restoring us to the image of God through your Son, Jesus Christ. And I pray that we would each completely commit ourselves to following Christ from this moment forward, Lord, that we wouldn't dabble around with all the other distractions, but we would make glorifying, honoring, and enjoying you our greatest purpose. And we're thankful that you've invited us into that we can actually become true humans, the kind that you intended us to be. I pray that we would move in that direction. In Jesus Christ's name. Amen. So the first question is this. It just says share your name, and would you rather have a hand twice as big or a hand twice as small? The eternal question. Linda has a question. Oh, yeah. Hey, if it makes it easier for you guys, you can stand up and find a group to talk about the questions with.
Okay. Would you rather have... Oh, wait, first name. Would you rather have a hand twice as big? I don't know, just the weight. Twice as big.